The reason they're not moving, the reason they're not involved is because, just as Margaret said, there's muscle in there stopping them moving. Feldenkrais would also say, you know, that as we get older, of course, all of our joints get a little bit tighter and stiffened into particular orientations. So you're having to change a lot of soft tissue as well, a lot of habitual ways that we organise ourselves. But that's where we really want to keep coming, finding that lightness, that playfulness. So not trying to make anything happen, but exploring and seeing if within that something can be allowed to emerge, something new can appear. So on your left side, right leg resting on your left. So your knees aren't too close to your abdomen. And your heels, they're just a distance where you can again find this place where you haven't got your feet pulled up really close to your buttocks. You haven't got them too far away. And you're finding this configuration for you that allows your leg to get a little bit lighter, that allows you to feel more connection through you. So again, how is it to lift your right leg? Your whole right leg. Is it getting lighter? Is there something more starting to get a little bit more involved? So something, even if it's tiny, is happening in both shoulders, in both hips, in your low back, in your ribs, in your sternum, in your neck. That you can feel the lightness in your contact with the ground, that you're not having to push anything into the ground to lighten your leg. And then really take your time here, soft, and explore. As you lift your leg, could you lift your head at the same time? Don't lift it straight away. Feel, is there something in the way that I lift my leg? So maybe my head doesn't want to lift it exactly the moment I lift my leg, but is there something about this lifting of my leg, finding lightness there, that allows me to find how my head could get light? And just feel, where would you take your head to do that? Would it roll a little bit? Would it chin come closer or further away? Maybe you want to side bend a little bit. How can this movement of your leg go through? And then leave your leg resting and lift your head. And some of you have found that if your head is a little heavy, that if you put your right hand on the floor in front of you, that can often give you just that little bit, by increasing your base of support a little bit more, giving you a little bit more ground, if you like, that you can find a way for your head to lift. And you're looking for lightness, and you're looking for, again, as your head lifts, what happens through the rest of you? Where does your weight shift? What way does it shift? Do you roll a little bit forward or back? Or maybe the weight rolls down in the direction of your pelvis. Just really explore. So what shapes could I make in the middle? Could I allow to happen through the middle of me that might allow my head to get lighter? And then leave your head resting again and lift your leg again. Just see what connections did that make a difference to what you could organise through your middle? Is there something beginning to just shift its weight a little bit more in the middle of you? And the reason it can shift its weight is because it's not working so hard to hold you up. And then, could you find a way to simultaneously lift your head and your leg? So at the moment, your leg is lifting straight up. It's not flexing, it's not extending. You're simply lifting it off, up, off the other leg and putting it down again. But if you find that doing that straight lift is still a little bit difficult, you can feel free to flex it a little bit or extend it a little bit or lift the knee or the foot higher. But finding a way for you where your head and your leg can both become light. And feel, to do that, how the underneath surface of you needs to be ready just to shift its weight a little. It's not getting stuck to the floor. And then begin to, as you keep doing this, how would you find a way, and again you can let your leg lift any way it likes to do this, if you were going to roll your nose a little bit more toward the floor in front, and then lift from there. How does this influence how you'd lift your leg? And then if you're going to roll your nose a little bit more toward the ceiling as you lifted, where would this take your leg? So how do all these positions, how we're organising the upper back, the base of the neck, where the shoulders are going, how do they all influence this trajectory that your leg will lift in? Or maybe as your head rolls a little bit forward, your chin will come closer to your chest as you lift your head and your leg. Or maybe as you roll forward, your chin will go a little bit away from your throat as you lift your leg. So we're just really exploring options here. And you're simply feeling, does some of these easier? They're more in my image. And some of them it's like, oh no, I'm already efforting. So it's not that you have to lift your head and your leg, you're just feeling how these influence, how they give you a chance to try some different ways. Maybe your nose could roll a little bit to the ceiling. And again, as I said, your chin could come down or your chin could go up. And how do all these different things influence this middle of you? How do they change what maybe becomes available? All these slightly different orientations of your head. So how many different options can you have? You could add in a translation. Maybe your head translates back in space, or it translates forward in space. So not just that it's flexing or extending or turning, but that it's moving through space. So often when you first start teaching ATM, you really do verbally have to cue people in to all these different options, because the options are so out of their awareness that they won't find them on their own. It's like, you would do that? I would take my head there. So begin to feel maybe that what we're doing with all of these different head trajectories is exploring different parts of your head circle. So maybe you could even include that your eyes a little bit in this if you want. You can think, I'm going to look down toward my feet as I lift my leg. Or I'm going to look to my right or left. Or up above me to the right, or up above me to the left. See, is there some connection between these movements that we've been doing through the past few weeks? Okay, pause for a moment. And after exploring all those different options, okay, everyone looks like they need a rest. Have a rest. As I said, he didn't really give rests in Amherst. Well, he did by telling stories. We'll be listening. He's going to teach a lesson this afternoon. So I think you'll enjoy hearing all the ideas that he's embedding. And there is something really interesting about when he's talking, and I remember this specifically in my training, that you could keep doing the lesson. And that it was something about, as he's talking, even though I wasn't really listening to him, something was going in while I was in movement. So how did I take in what he was saying when I was in this qualitative moving space? Okay, come back to the same position. And sense now, after exploring all those options, could you very simply, as you lift your right leg straight up, could your right ear come closer to your right shoulder? So that your head's going to lift directly. It's going to side bend. It's not going to turn, it's not going to rotate, it's not going to flex, it's not going to extend. But when you lift your leg, your head could just go sideways. So there's something about all those different options that can clarify what for many of us this side bending is not often as known. And feel how the weight shifts along you then when it's a side bending. Rather than a turning or a flexing or an extending. How does the weight move so that you don't really need to go a lot forward or back, or round, get small or tall in the normal sense. You just get shorter on one side and longer on the other. And rest on your back. So really by this exploring options, by looking for comfort and ease, it gives us really the opportunity to soften some of our habitual configurations. Soften some of our habitual ways of being the person that we are. So that it's not that it's changing you. It's just allowing you more possibilities. Okay, come onto your right side this time. And for a minute or two, could you just explore that same idea that you're going to lift now your left leg and your head, and just finding some different possibilities, some different ways, and feeling how the movement of your head, where it goes, can influence what happens through your legs, how you transfer your weight. But always looking for ease and comfort. So not making it happen, but just feeling as you mobilize your intention to do it a particular way. Am I ready to do this? No. Okay, down. Let me just change the trajectory a little bit. Does that allow me to find a little bit more lightness, a little bit more ease? So it's never about lifting your leg and your head. It's about finding a way to mobilize your intention without all those habitual ways of doing it. And gradually, through exploring those options, that you could find a way that as you lift your whole leg a little bit up into the air, that your head can simply side bend. And your left ear can come closer to your shoulder. So that you can feel, to do this, that really what it's doing is your whole right side gets a little bit longer. Okay, now find again an easy way, thinking of bringing your bottom and top halves together to bring your left hand around your left knee. So that every part of you is mobilized. And just notice where you take your head to do that. And this absolute connection of your head to your upper torso, to the upper ribs, to the sternum, to your collarbones. And then leave your head resting on your upper arm, on your lower arm, somewhere where it's resting but it's ready to move, it's ready to go, ready to respond. And begin again to now bring your left knee closer towards your head. And notice the trajectory you do that on. You've already done this the other side, so your left knee somewhere underneath, your left hand somewhere underneath your left knee. And you're finding a way to bring your knee more in the direction of your head. And again, you can roll, you can do whatever you like here to make it easier. And then you're starting to take your knee a little bit away from your head. Go gently. And really stay within a range where your hand's not pulling on your knee. Just what's available for you at the moment to take your knee away So again, this is very much the movement we were doing on your back when you were taking your soul toward the floor, if you like. It's just now we're in a different configuration. And we'll constantly do this in awareness through movement. Keep changing the orientation, changing the habitual configuration to give you a different way to sense yourself. So your knees swinging towards your head and away from your head. Towards your head and away. So the distance between your nose and your knee is coming closer, and then the distance between your nose and your knee is getting further apart. And most of you will be beginning to feel that with your hand in this position, it's much, much easier to bring your knee towards your nose than away from it. So what's going to have to change in your middle? And then feel free to lift your head as well. If your head can be light as you do this, just having your head lifted into the air lightly, easily, does that allow you to find a little bit more space in there? And really be clear, you're bringing your knee towards your nose and away from your nose. So it's not that the nose and your knee are connected and they're both moving up and down, but they're coming toward each other and away from each other. Okay, pause for a moment. So you've got a bit of a movement problem here. And I don't mean problem, but you've got to solve something here. And, you know, Feldenkrais was an expert at this, putting you into situations where, what do you do when you can't do it? When you're getting a bit stuck. That's when our patterns come in. Okay, so go to the same side. This time, you're still going to take your right hand to your lower right leg, but this time you can have it anywhere between the top of your tibia, so that's the top of your lower leg bone, and your ankle. Sorry, the left, yeah. So anywhere. You can hold anywhere along that length of your lower leg. So just explore that and find where's more comfortable for me. Where is it? Is it more in the middle of my leg? Is it down near my ankle? And as we continue this, you can feel free to explore that a little bit and feel we've still taken your knee out of the equation. Don't forget you've got an ankle, some of you. And again, begin to explore this idea of your knee being able to move closer to your nose and away from your nose. Without bending the elbow. Or if you bend the elbow, just feel what engages. So you can actually do this once your arm's really soft and have a soft elbow, where it's not pulling. But for so many of us, it's such a strong habit because of what we do, what our function of our arm is. And most of you are finding that the closer you get your hand down to your ankle, the easier it is to begin to swing that knee back behind you. And again, feel there's no criteria on how high your knee can be up toward the ceiling to do this. It can be down low. You've got to find, where is it that I can begin to swing that hip joint, swing that upper hip joint. So is there a place where my knee comes close to the ceiling and then it goes back down closer to my other leg so that it could make an arc? It doesn't have to be a straight line. Let your hip joint do something. Let it do something so your back doesn't have to do it all. So you can really feel you've got that ball and socket. So when would it sort of, for many of us, make sense that the knee pops up toward the ceiling and the foot goes down? Remember those movements we did yesterday of the foot staying down and the knee lifting and then the knee going down and the foot lifting? Do you think they've got anything to do with what this movement is? And you can really begin to sense that your left hand has to be soft, because if it's not, you're not going to be able to make the adjustments you need through your forearm and your elbow and your shoulder. If it's hanging on, you've taken out lots of possibilities for your shoulder to rotate and your hip to rotate, which is going to allow your ribs to soften more. And pause. We'll do one more variation. So come back onto the same side, holding your knee with your hand. First thing, is it getting a little bit more comfortable? A little bit easier? A little bit more availability through your torso? Is your head responding to that? And then we're just going in one direction now. So you can hold, actually you can hold anywhere along your leg you like for this, wherever it's comfy. We're only going in one direction here. So you're not taking your knee away at the moment. We're just exploring bringing the knee closer to the head and back to your resting position. And just really feel where do you let your knee go? Do you keep your knee down low? So how can you bring your knee close to your nose? Close to your nose. And again, you can roll forward, you can roll back, you can do whatever you like. You're finding a way, simply not going away, not going away, not going away. Just toward. And what you're feeling is, what do you want to do that? So if you simply started that movement, would it feel easier to breathe in or breathe out? So we're really looking again at the start of this movement. If your intention is to bring your knee closer to your head, and again, there's a million ways you can do it, would you breathe in or breathe out? Because you're going to have to fold and soften somewhere in your middle to do this. To bring your knee closer to your head. So what are people finding? To breathe in or breathe out? Out? For lots of people, it's easier to breathe out. To sort of soften the sternum down a little bit, to let the back lengthen a little bit. So could you do the opposite? Go slowly here. How could you breathe in and do that movement? And go really slowly. Really give yourself a chance to sense. If you do the opposite to what you normally do, something, you're going to allow the possibility of some other space opening up to breathe. That maybe isn't your habitual. So what's important here is really this mobilizing again your intention. I'm going to bring my knee closer and I can breathe in as I do it. So I'm still rounding, I'm still have to round in these many variations to bring my knee closer. But how do I do it on the breath in? And if you were doing it already on the breath in, how would you do it on the breath out? This can lead to really profound changes. So go slow. How do I fold? How do I bring my knee closer to my head on a breath in? Which is going to, you have to find something in your chest. And then for a moment, return to your head and your knee moving in the same direction. So you're going to imagine now a stick Just like we were doing yesterday with the ruler. You have to imagine now there's a ruler between your left knee and your nose. And if your nose, if you think it's a bit soft, you could think of your forehead or your chin. Doesn't really matter. And you're going to feel, how would I take my knee away and my head follows it, and how would I bring my knee up and my head follows it. Or you could think I'm taking my head forward and my knee, but there's this constant relationship. And again, if you think of that stick, something has to mobilize through your middle differently to keep this stick. And how are you breathing to do this? When do you breathe in? When do you breathe out? And whatever you're doing, if you've got a pattern, do the opposite. So it doesn't have to be a big movement here. You can do it with the cycle of your breathing. And leave it and rest on your back. So keeping reminding ourselves that all of these ATMs are allowing us to go on our own personal learning journey. What has meaning for us? So come up to standing and see how this lesson has influenced you. How's this different from last time? Where we were exploring a lot more the different head positions, how it influenced your leg. So again, slowly take a step forward. And how do you take your weight on your leg now? And again, as you take the weight on your leg, yes, you've got a sensation. How free is your head there? How many of those possibilities of those cardinal directions are available? How do you scan the comfort, the ease of movement? How are your two hips responding to each other at the moment? Your two shoulders responding to each other? Your knees. What's happened to your knees? We've been working all morning with taking your knee out of the equation. Maybe for some of you that's allowed you to soften your knees in a way that maybe is different for you. Something different in your arms, your elbows. But there's something about constraining something from doing it habitual allows more options even though it's been constrained. And just begin to see, can you start to walk a little faster? Maybe you could walk backwards. Maybe you could walk a little bit sideways. Is it easier one way by exploring these different head positions and your leg and how they can know each other a little bit more, respond to each other a little bit more? Okay, so just have a couple of minutes to walk around and then we'll come back and do a little bit more before lunch.